Welcome to Critical Targets. This is E&T's new series of podcasts that looks at the challenges facing society and humanity and how engineers and technologists lead the way in finding the solutions. It stemmed from an article I wrote 3 years ago, identifying 7 main problem areas ranging from sustainability to transport. And in each one we enlisted a champion to help identify a specific challenge. The first of these challenges is based around diversity. And our champion back in 2021 was Dr. Shini Somara. Now she is a mechanical engineer, fluid dynamicist, author, TED talker, broadcaster, inspirer of engineers both present and future, and so much more besides. Most importantly of all, I'm delighted she is joining us once more to revisit both the topic of diversity and the specific critical target we set back then. So first of all, welcome Shini. I think it's fair to say that the issue of diversity, both within the engineering sector and society as a whole, has had a tumultuous few years.
Yeah, certainly. It's an interesting industry because it churns out so much innovation, and it really advances technology and progressive society. But it's not the most diverse or inclusive industry. So that's something I think we both have an interest in changing.
Very much so. And we'll come back onto that a little bit later. But maybe we could switch and look at specifically the engineering profession. So a critical target that we set 3 years ago was, I'll read this out, by 2030, the makeup of the STEM professions in all areas of expertise and seniority should broadly reflect that of the population. And I suppose the key factor here is that if the engineering sector is to solve the world's problems, then diversity is a key attribute for it to have. And Shini, I've seen you discuss this on many different platforms. So would you say it's true that a diverse world will be best understood and catered for by a diverse technology sector?
Absolutely, because quite simply, if technology isn't designed by everyone, it won't work for everyone. And again, we come from a perspective of catering to the majority, and the majority does not reflect diversity. If you want to live in a diverse society, then we have to allow technology to be developed and engineering to be developed by a diverse group. And, engineering, the beauty of engineering is that it really does warrant collaboration, experimentation, and prototyping and designing and thinking outside of the box. Those are the reasons why I find engineering so fantastic. And so I hope that critical targets that you set 3 years ago are met, because I think it allows for better solutions. And engineers are ultimately problem solvers. So to enhance solutions, one way of enhancing solutions is to have a diverse group of people working on something. And I think sometimes we get lost in why we're doing things. And that's why I refer back to the climate debate, because sometimes I think there's a loss of focus. We don't push for more climate conscious solutions because it's profitable. We push for more climate conscious solutions because it's morally and ethically the right thing to do. And that's the same with ED&I issues. We're not doing this to tick boxes so that we, have a diverse group of people on boards so that the company looks good. We're doing this because it genuinely improves solutions.
So Shini, on reflection, our critical target seems very UK-centric. So if you're taking women as the easiest category to quantify, well, I know diversity is far wider than that. In many countries, there are as many women in STEM as there are men. I think even in the US, there's about parity. But in the UK, a recent Engineering UK survey showed that we're still stuck at about 12%, which is very similar as it was 5 years ago. So why in the UK in particular are we making so little progress?
Well, being of a diverse background myself, I am British, but my parents are from Southeast Asian countries. And I have lived in other countries throughout my career. I think that one of the things that holds us back in the UK is our connection to our history. I think sometimes there's less of an openness to try new things. We pride ourselves on success stories from our past. And so we are less open to experimentation and trying new things. I think London, where I live, is a very cosmopolitan city, one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the world. Yet I don't think in engineering our approaches to engineering are as cosmopolitan as London might suggest as a city in the UK. So if ED&I was to increase and improve in the UK, it would be to adopt a more open attitude. And sort of getting more specific, my experience of the engineering industry is that when I graduated and I got my first proper job in engineering, I was the only female in the company. And I was a young graduate, very low on confidence. Being female didn't help with that sense of imposter syndrome. But my colleagues had absolutely no tools, knowledge, or experience in how to deal with someone who was radically different to them. And I didn't know how to deal with I didn't know how to deal with colleagues who were more senior than me, because I was just so inexperienced at being in industry. So I think it's a learning curve, and it really is a question of knowing how to make minorities feel welcome, and having an attitude of openness towards people who are different. I think the UK could really benefit from that. In other countries where I've lived, there's a sense of acknowledging what people's differences can bring to the table. And I've started to coin a new term basically off the back of my book, Engineers Making a Difference. And my new term is that we should make a difference through our differences, because I think we are living in an era where by being different, we can make a difference. And we are at a time where differences are more welcomed. There's less fear. There's less fear of our differences and an openness to differences, which certainly wasn't the case 20 years ago when I was first entering into the engineering industry. But now we have schemes like reverse mentoring, which I think is really important, and various things like that. So, we're making change. It is slow, and I think the UK is lagging behind compared to the rest of the world. But at least, with podcasts like this, for example, at least we're open to doing things differently so that we can be more diverse and inclusive.
It's fascinating, that sort of cultural inertia, if you like, that we have, that you say is it's holding back proper diversity integration, if you like. But I'm just wondering about the pandemic, terrible as it was, is it having some beneficial effect in how the workforce is managed? By splitting the workplace between home and office and awareness of work-life balance, particularly with reference to childcare, is it opening up the workplace to women engineers as it hasn't done before? But again, will that take more time to filter through?
Absolutely. During COVID, I was working for CGTN, and at the time we made a film about how COVID has affected industry. And one of the major things was this idea of working from home. Because apart from the actual logistics of working from home, I think it massively changed attitudes of employees because they realized that actually they were in the driving seat of their career. And for me, that has been the biggest shift, is that we went from an era where many potential employees were desperate to get into certain companies to be able to work for certain commercial enterprises that represented certain things. So, for example, there was a time when everyone wanted to work for Google, or everybody wanted to work for, certain companies that really treated their employees well. But then with COVID, what I noticed was that employees were starting to pick and choose where they worked. So it was less about an emphasis on the employer and more on more emphasis on employees calling the shots, because they realize that actually employees can really contribute with the right setup, with the right circumstances. Individuals can actually choose how best they work. And if it's juggling their working hours around childcare, so be it. As long as they deliver what they're meant to deliver, it doesn't matter when they work. And so you saw this real increase in people emailing at odd times. Whereas back in the day, people would be nervous to email outside of work hours, worried about how that might look to their colleagues. Whereas today, there's so much more flexibility. And I think employers are realizing that by providing people with flexibility, they're actually getting the most out of their employees. But that really involves a lot of trust. And trust is something that is so massively required when it comes to underrepresented individuals, because a person of minority may not look like you or have experience like you, or, their backgrounds may not be recognizable, but there has to be a massive level of trust that that person will deliver. And in order to get that trust from someone underrepresented, you have to provide an environment where that person feels safe to let their guard down and be the best version of themselves. And so COVID has essentially laid down the first stones along the path of developing trust between employees and employers and people with unconventional lifestyles.
I think one of the really interesting things about this greater employee choice is that employers are recognizing it and recognizing that EDI is one of the aspects that is becoming really attractive, particularly to younger engineers out there, and they are marketing themselves more along that EDI basis.
I don't know how to approach that question, if it isn't a question, because, for example, I fit in the EDI category because I'm a woman, I have darker skin. And so I am considered to be someone of ethnic minority as a woman in engineering. But I wouldn't say that I'm now marketing myself because everyone's now interested in ED&I. I've always been that. I've always been female and always been a person of color. I think from my perspective, as someone who is in a minority, it's refreshing to see that people are now actually acknowledging that we exist, because before we blended into the background and had no platform to speak or be heard. And so I would hate to think that someone like me is using an interest in ED&I to my advantage. I mean, if people think that, then spare a thought for the fact that for a long time I've been disadvantaged because no one considered ED&I. This is the difference between being acknowledged that we exist and being ignored entirely. So ED&I isn't something like, oh, great, yes, I can use that. I've got that to my advantage. I feel that finally people are actually starting to realize that we exist. I mean, when I was working in engineering, I was more qualified than most of my senior colleagues because of the qualifications that I had pursued. But because of the color of my skin and my gender, I was not acknowledged for existing. And that's a terrible shame to the engineering industry, because essentially, and we always hear about the leaky pipeline, an engineer was lost in the mix because of a lack of acknowledgement of ED&I. So was it the engineering industry that didn't nurture engineering talent in whatever package it came in, or was it me not having a place to be heard and acknowledged because of a lack of ED&I awareness that made me leave engineering for a career in media and STEM communication? So, yeah, I mean, ask your question again, because maybe I've misinterpreted it.
I think what you said was absolutely spot on. It wasn't actually the point of the question. I wasn't suggesting that you, as a person of minority, should be using that to promote yourself. I was saying that the employers are far more aware of using that as a way of promoting themselves to the wider generations, whether it's to people of minorities or not. Just young people find that environment, along with companies that can have a good sustainability record, for example, as well. These are things that the industry is getting better at and better at appreciating. That was my point.
I mean, I hope that companies are embracing ED&I, but I really hope that companies are not embracing ED&I because it makes them look good, but they're actually embracing ED&I because what they output will be better as a result. Because any solution to a problem that is created by one slice of society in a homogenous way will not be a diverse, well-rounded, far-reaching solution. It will just be one-dimensional. So I hope that companies are embracing ED&I because it actually will boost their productivity and output, and it's not just a PR stunt, essentially.
It's so important, isn't it? It cannot just be part of the recruitment process. It's got to be part of the way that the company actually operates for it to have any true value.
Yeah, and we do have to be careful. That's why I keep talking about climate, because, there are so many initiatives when it comes to climate. We have COP26, 27, 28, like all these different gatherings of people who all seem to be caring about the climate. But how effective are these events in actually making change? And I hope that we don't go in the same direction with ED&I, where it looks like we're doing a lot, but the actual significance and impact in what's happening doesn't seem to be happening, or is happening slowly. And then people are scratching their heads, wondering why change is happening slowly when so many initiatives exist. And I think it's a lot to do with incentive and focus and the need to do what's right rather than what's profitable. And both what's right and what's profitable can be the same thing. But right now, sometimes I wonder whether what's right and what's profitable are actually misaligned somehow.
Absolutely. So anyway, if we can look back at our critical target, for the UK at least, our target back in 2021 was, as I say, to have that diverse community by 2030. Will 2030 become too soon for that to be realised? Certainly in the UK. Other countries, as you say, are a bit further ahead. So is it too soon, or if we were to reimagine our critical target, should we still stick with it, or should we? Does it need to be updated and be a bit more realistic, perhaps?
Targets are always interesting because, I've been very conscious of ED&I issues for about 20 years. And I have not seen those statistics move very much. I think at best I've heard that, it's not mechanical engineering, but it may be civil engineering is now up to 16% female from 12. When I was graduating from university 20 years ago, we didn't even count ethnic diversity in engineering. I mean, the statistics just did not exist. So we don't even know how far we've come. So for me, targets are always, it's a great thing to have. But, change can happen a lot more quickly if there is genuine incentive to change. So by all means, keep the targets. The change couldn't happen quickly enough, in my opinion, because so far it has been going at an absolute snail's pace. But at least we're tending in the right direction. So it's attainable. It's attainable much more. It's sooner than that, I think. But I think the resistances to change are down to attitudes. So how quickly can we change attitudes is really the question, because we can hire lots of women and we can hire lots of people from, a diverse and inclusive background. But what are we doing in terms of retaining this talent? So we can tick boxes very easily, but what about the long term in actually keeping people there? Because I don't really want to focus on achieving the targets. I want to see change happen for good.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And that, presumably your message within this would be that we should never stop trying, whether it is in that fundamental recruitment, whether that's target based or not, or in that established proportions within the engineering community as a whole. We mustn't stop trying to achieve that.
I think we must never stop trying to achieve the targets that you set. But you're probably hearing a little bit of my frustration on these subjects, because I really see the hurdles that are not being jumped. So to give you an example, recently I was at a diversity event, and there was a period of time set into the schedule for networking. And during that networking session, I asked someone who was there why they wanted to be part of the event, why they were there. I asked them why they were there, and they said, it's just a nice thing to do. It's just a nice thing to be at a diversity event. And the reason why I get frustrated is because I'm glad people think it's nice to be part of ED&I events in the same way that it's nice to be part of climate change events. But I'm also representing the individuals whose lives depend on it. You know, my dad is a brilliant engineer and has contributed so much to the engineering industry. And he was only able to contribute to engineering because of opportunities of getting an education in engineering, working his way up through his career in engineering, feeling welcome, feeling valued, being recognized for the talent he brings to engineering. And I'm really concerned that people in minorities don't get those opportunities. My dad is one of very few. I hear more stories of people that really want to be engineers, but they're not being given opportunities to get an education. They're not being able to fund opportunities to develop their careers in engineering. They feel uncomfortable in industry because they don't feel welcome. So all of that talent is being lost, is being leaked out of the system for people that really want to give to engineering. So I don't think these diversity or inclusion or ED&I events are nice. I think they're crucial. They're crucial for the future of the UK because we have a massive skills gap. And so I'm not doing this because it's a nice thing to do. I'm doing this because I'm genuinely worried about the engineering skills of the future in the UK. And I want to see more people who have a passion for engineering being given a chance to really succeed and thrive in engineering because they want to, and because we in the UK need them to. So, you know, there's a lot more gravity to ED&I than I think many people realize. And so if there was one reason to be having this conversation on this podcast, it's really to convince people that we're not focusing on ED&I to just be nice. We're focusing on ED&I because all of our futures depend on it.
What a great way to finish. Thank you very much, Shini. That is really insightful. Thank you so much again for all your thoughts and for once again being a champion for our critical targets. This is one of 7 episodes in our Critical Target series. You can now listen to all episodes by searching for the E&T Critical Targets wherever you get your podcasts or by visiting the podcast section on the E&T website.